So, Francie, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure.
So, before we get into your good work, I want to know 5 years ago, we were about a month into this pandemic, which did so many things. How much of living through that time has affected the way that you live your life and do work today?
Ooh, love question. Great question. Let's see. Um, well, I think like one thing that I had a young, so my daughter now is 12. At the time, she was like in first grade, and we'd also just moved from California. So, and we were in a teeny tiny rental house because we were renovating a house.
Yeah.
So one of the things I kind of took away from that is like, it's just so important to like be engaged, have personal space, exercise. I actually, it's funny because it's like so ingrained now in my brain. I'm not sure if I think about it as a as a lesson, but I think that's really what it is. Like I remember having huge fights with my daughter. Like she always wanted to be near me. She wanted to be on Zooms with me. And I just think that like there wasn't enough going on for her. There wasn't enough things that were interesting that she was engaged in. I think it's just so important to like find things that make your heart sing. Um, and just like so that in case you're worried about her, she's now really into field hockey, so it's great. Now I'm driving all over the place, taking her to field hockey practice. But I do think that like finding your thing is so important. And for me, it's nice. It's lucky for me because that thing is like my work. Ideally, you can combine the things, right? Where you can like kind of get paid for what makes your heart sing. But then other people have hobbies that like are not really like paying jobs. And so maybe that's the way you do it. But I do think that like we all have to be really honest about like, and like another thing that came out of it, I think is like you just end up having to really be honest about your values. And like, for instance, just not putting up with crappy behavior from people, whether it's work behavior or personal behavior. And then also realizing like what I really missed during COVID was like hanging out with people.
Yeah.
And a really weird thing that I noticed is that I really miss smelling people's perfume as they walk by me on the street.
Yeah.
It's so random, but like now when I'm like walking around and smell someone's perfume, like great perfume.
Huh?
And like that was just something that never happened because you were trying to stay as far away as you could. You had the mask,
Yeah.
and I think I really do enjoy smells.
That is interesting. That is so revelatory because I hadn't thought about that. But there's little things that would hit me on a visceral level where I would just be like, wow, like the smell of food coming out of a restaurant or something like that. Like there were so many things that we were separated from. Yeah, that's wonderful. So let me ask you this: at the end of the day, if I put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids right now, fifth graders, it's career
Mm.
day, and one of the kids in the back of the room is curious and is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your answer?
Ooh, yeah. So even with adults, I have to be really careful and talk to them about what we do, like if it's, a young person, because people don't really get it necessarily right away. But it's basically helping people find the song in their heart, right? And that we really make it easy to figure out how to be great at what you do and whatever that is. And then the other thing that I would say to them, and I say to people all the time, is like, it's not that well known, but when you help people find how to be better, that helps organizations and it makes people want to stay in organizations longer. And so we're helping like the individuals be better at areas that they aren't great at. And then that also helps their employers become a better organization. That's probably what I would say.
So let's figure out how we got here. Take me back to when you were in the fifth grade. What did you want to be? What was your dream job?
Oh my God. I don't know if it was fifth grade, but there is a very funny thing I wrote down somewhere where I either wanted to be a jockey or a beautician.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so this is kind of what I mean. Like, I grew up like riding horses, and I love riding horses. And I guess for a period of time, that was the only way I thought you could like make a job with horses.
Yeah.
Um, to be a jockey is like psychotic. I mean, that's like a death wish.
Yeah.
So it's so funny to look back on that. But I think it was because, and actually those two are interesting, right? Too, because this has been a problem my whole life is I have like the side of me that wants to kind of be creative or wants to um, be artistic, but then I also have the side that sort of really enjoys the analytic stuff. And that's always been like my struggle a little bit professionally, is trying to find a way to mesh the two. And I think what I kind of figured out after years and years is that it's not so much that I want to be in a creative field, it's that I want to be creative analytically.
Yeah.
I want to be creative in finding solutions to problems. And that's like a really, you can't say, oh, when I come out of school, I just want to be creative about solutions. Like that's not really, I mean, yeah, a lot of people would like you to do that in your job. And so that's kind of like my, I'd say, a thread in my life.
Yeah. You just took me back to high school with that answer. When I was in high school, I was 4'11". I was a runner, and I tend to have a level of me. I don't see like the typical fear things. I could have totally been a jockey. That would have been perfect, you know?
Yes. Well, exactly. If you don't have fear and you're short and you're thin, right? You're sort of wiry. You
Yeah.
can,
That I
and if
don't
you
know
like
why
animals, if you
I
like
don't
animals.
I don't know why it didn't dawn on me. And I love horses, so that would have been perfect. Yeah.
But I mean, you might not be like, might have like one fewer eye right now if you had done
yeah.
that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Or like brain damage. I mean, it's like, it is a serious
Oh yeah.
commitment.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Um, so let me ask you this. Take me back to your childhood. What were these foundational elements that were imbued on you that made you who you are to help other people and to be in this position? What were those
Mm.
things?
Oh, well, I'll say the first thing is, so I went to a Quaker school. I grew up in Philadelphia, and there are all these like Quaker schools. So it's, Quakers were some of the early pilgrims
Yeah.
in America. They were leaving persecution, and it's a form of Protestant, but just very different. And it was like, probably at the time seemed like kind of crazy. And, and actually, if you think about it in terms of like the Pope and the power that the church wielded, it was probably kind of scary to the church, because the whole point was like finding the spirit within you. Like you didn't really need like a minister the same way.
Yeah.
Who had like a direct connection out of it. Anyway, that all being said,
Yeah.
they're like a different way of thinking about the world. And their big thing was like, everyone deserves respect, every being deserves respect. And I always thought, I was like, obvious, I was like, obviously, like, you guys, like, chill.
Yeah.
Um, and now when I get older, I realize, like, kind of why that was an important thing to say, is that I think some people, they don't see, that's not like a value of theirs. They're kind of like, well, some people maybe deserve more respect, maybe some less, and so for me, like, I want, you know, I, I'm kind of like glass half full, like rising tide rises all boats. And I just don't have that feeling of like, well, I have less than you have more, or if I have more than you have less. There's no sense of like binary. It's like it can all be better, and we can, and everything can be better if we're doing better, And
Yeah.
I think that ended up being like really important for this business, because um like I really was like, I had a lot of empathy for, like, initially the whole idea was who, if people are losing their jobs, like one of the example was like manufacturing. There was a statistic about a lot of jobs being lost in manufacturing. I actually just saw, by the way, a statistic on social media showing that since like the 40s, the jobs in manufacturing have been going down. Like the peak in America was like, I think, World War II, like Reconstruction stuff. And so it's actually been going down. That, it's always percentages, but the idea is that like it's never been great. You know what I mean? The peak was post World War II.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, and so I had a lot of sympathy, thinking, well, if these manufacturing people are losing their job, like who's helping them? Because if you haven't gone to college, I don't know of any career services at high schools, supporting people, and even career services at colleges are really not that great. And I just was thinking that must be really scary if you have to find another career, and it's something maybe your father did or grandfather did. You have, you sort of counted on this as like a lifetime job. And so that was what kind of got me started in this whole thing. And I think because I just was sort of thinking about a group of people and like feeling what they must feel like, I sort of relate that to Quakerism and just like the respect for all people thing, and just feeling like, I guess another person could have thought, well, tough for them.
Right. Right. Right.
But I was like, that's terrible. That must be so hard. What are they doing?
Yeah.
Kind of as though we're a friend, I mean, the same to me.
So, who's been that inspiration for you in your career? Who's been kind of the fuel for you to become who you are?
Mm, that's a good question. I don't really know. I think one of my problems is there's something called what's it called? It's like hindsight bias or something. All these biases, right?
Uh-huh.
But I definitely have the thing where once I like know something, I like forget that I didn't know it.
Uh-huh.
And I sort of integrate it. So it's always hard when I have a question like that. I think that probably the best way to answer is like I read a lot of books and there are a lot of authors who I'm really inspired by. Um, but I don't have any like one person that I was like, that person.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like I never get tired of reading the stuff that Brene Brown says, or a lot of these really smart like nonfiction type writers who they have like a perspective. I find it really interesting to think about like what's a solution for like a big problem. Like that to me is like what I spend a lot of time thinking about, like what gets me excited. And but I'll keep thinking as we're going because I might have a
Yeah.
better answer later on. But I
Yeah.
don't have anyone that's top of my mind.
No, that's great. No, that is a great answer. So let me ask you this. How important is it for you every day to have balance between your work, which can be heavy, helping people, between your life, your soul, your family, all these things? Is balance a big thing? How do you go into your days and get all this done at the best possible ability?
Yeah. Well, one of the benefits of owning your own company is in the end, you're kind of like responsible to yourself
Yeah.
about results. So that's going to be good or bad. And so I think I read a lot in the very beginning about being an entrepreneur and stuff like that. Because this is like the first company, I've been entrepreneurial and I've started things, but this is the first thing where it was like much more all encompassing. It wasn't kind of like before it was more like a services business where you're just kind of like starting something. This is like everything. It's like thinking about structure and contracts and stuff. Anyway, so I guess I would just say that like I try to spend like the evenings kind of decompressing so that in the morning I can feel peppy and excited to do what I'm doing and maybe a little bit like rearing to go. Like sometimes in the beginning, I remember I could really work on this like 24 hours a day. And then I kind of got to a point where if I worked really hard and I was sort of exhausted myself on one day, then it was hard for me to kind of go the next day.
Yeah.
And so what I try to do is like have like a natural end, like this won't happen next year, but this year I've been picking up my daughter from school, and that end almost creates like a delineation of work and non-work because then it's like all the kind of stuff that happens with after school stuff. But it's funny because like I'm like an extrovert off the charts. And so a lot of the things that I do make me really happy and excited um, in the moment. But then I find that like doing lots of interviews or lots of like first time calls with people, it also is kind of draining for me. Like I'm like get really tired. And so I just try to think about that and try to like, you know, just not be burning the candle on both ends. If I feel tired, be tired. If you're sick, be sick, and kind of remember like you just got to be excited tomorrow too. It's not,
Yeah.
tomorrow the sun's going to come up again, and like there's more to do, and just kind of try to have more like mental balance, like not put too much pressure on results, and put right more focus on like the what's the word the process, right,
Yeah.
and maybe change the process as opposed to like holding on too hard onto the results.
So what about entrepreneurs? Who is your favorite entrepreneur out there? Who do you look up to? Who may you emulate? Is there anybody out there that you look up to?
I'd have to think about that one too.
Okay.
I'll tell you my big problem with entrepreneurship and companies is that, well, actually, probably if I had to say, it's probably someone who started a marketplace.
Yeah.
So Terawatt, my company, is a marketplace, and I just love choice in life, and that's why I think a marketplace is just an incredible business. But the other thing that's great about marketplaces is that I think there's much more well, theoretical. Okay, Airbnb, like I'm obsessed with. Okay, that's probably a good one. I think those guys are really smart. I still like disagree with some things that they do, but I think that like I think about them a lot in terms of like how I can be more like that. And there are a lot of differences. Like that's a B2C business or mostly consumer. Like it's mostly a retail business, people getting hotel rooms effectively. Whereas we're really selling into businesses. But yeah, I think Airbnb is probably a good one. But the other thing is about business that drives me crazy is I really, and I probably this whole like respect for all people is I really don't want to be in the business of like dominating people
Yeah.
and making them pay the most they're willing to pay.
Yeah.
I like a lot of like theory in marketplaces is allowing there to be a lot of value in your offering so that like maybe you're charging, I'm just going to make this up, charging someone $10 and they'd be willing to pay 50, that makes them come back
Yeah.
because that's a good deal for them. Whereas I think there's so many companies out there who are like, how much can we charge? What, like what will people pay? And that's true. And that works for a little while, but I do think that that's a little bit short term. And I would rather have a business that's like self-sustaining, that like people really love. Another example, like Craigslist.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Craigslist is a little bit like low value, low cost, but there's still something really about Craigslist that like it will solve your problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you have it.
I saw a special on him. There used to be a network in the early 2000s called Current TV. Al Gore set it up when he got out of
Hmm.
office. And it was like citizen journalism. And I did it for a little while for Kansas City. But I remember seeing a special on the creator of Craigslist and how many death threats he got and how many people, because they all said that he closed down the help wanted for newspapers, right? So he was just flabbergasted. Like, I'm just a
The
guy
journalists
that's,
were threatening
yeah. Like, I'm just a guy that set this up for free. I'm not looking for anything massive. It's a low rent web. Anyway, it was just interesting how he started it, how it gained steam. It was kind of the Wikipedia for classifieds. It was kind of the,
100%. But that's 100% right. I mean, that business model and basically everyone figuring these out is like has torpedoed
yeah,
newspapers, and they really are still struggling to figure out a business
yeah,
model
yeah,
because they relied so much on the ads,
yeah,
and I guess everyone else didn't realize that. But it's always a little bit sad too because that could have newspapers could have done this, right?
yeah,
I mean, we all were aware when the internet was coming out, like this is
right,
available to everyone. They just
right,
they just missed it.
yeah,
So, oh, it's also so funny you said it. So I can't remember even the guy's name, but Craig, whatever.
yeah,
My understanding is he has even a foundation.
yeah,
So for the pennies he's making, it's probably so much money that he's still like
yeah.
throwing it, into some foundation. So it's not like he's made like $1 billion, I guess. Yeah, no, it's so interesting. One of the things that like, especially in like the financial press, I think there's so much like lionizing of entrepreneurs and making it seem like, oh, it's inevitable. And like, this guy's a genius. And like, that's just like not the case. It's
Yeah.
like someone really figured out one thing. They had a lot of like guts and they made it work. Or like even Airbnb, like they had this funny story of like, they launched like 3 or 4 times before
Yeah.
anyone took
Uh-huh.
pay attention.
Yeah.
And I think it's that kind of stuff all the time,
Hmm.
where you just had it's like more about stick to itiveness than anything else.
Yeah.
And that's what I also try to remember too. Like, there's also some like one of these truisms or something like, if it's not working for you right now, maybe it's not meant to work for you right now. Maybe you have to learn some other things
Yeah.
until the next thing happens. And I think about that a lot because one of my like epiphanies in the past few years is like when I have find this business like at a plateau, and I feel like I'm not able to get to that next thing. The answer always is connecting to more people,
Yeah.
and it's
Absolutely.
always like problems, getting more thoughts on it because at some point I run out of like self-generating thoughts. Like I have to like talk to other people, and it's always the case. And I always think, oh, I'll think it out. You have to like reach out and let people know what's going on or get advice, and that's when things start to change because that's no information.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Francie. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated. What advice would you impart?
Do sales.
Okay.
So that is like one of my big regrets in life. And so okay, in business school, I took the Myers-Briggs test, which is the first time I ever had a personality assessment. And just FYI, like not everyone loves it anymore. Some people say it's not scientifically valid, but I actually thought it was really helpful for me. So
Yeah.
I'll just preface by saying that. But it was the first time I ever had a personal assessment. And now in my business, this is very common. Coaches are always doing personal assessments. They love them. And it really is an incredible tool to know yourself. Um, and there's kind of like four metrics, like four things. You're kind of like binary on four things. And the fourth one is introvert, extrovert. And the three, I was kind of like in the middle. Like it wasn't, I was a little bit more of like a feeler, which is means you're like, you feel more than you like think. So like the way things make you feel sometimes is more important than like the, what numbers look like. Okay. So that's a little bit of something I had. But on the extrovert side, it was like apparently every question I'd answered was extrovert. So like it was like introvert, extrovert, and like every answer I had was like extrovert. And so it showed this chart where it's like extrovert off the all the way to the side. And it was surprising to me because I'm not like a person that walks into rooms and is like chummy with people and shakes hands and works a room. Like it's that I really care about relationships.
Yeah.
And like when I learned that in business school, I was like, wow, that's so interesting. And then I realized that so I was at a really quantity business school. I went to University of Chicago. And that was also like rare. And so I realized like, wow, like, so that's like kind of a superpower, and that's something I should really lean into. And then when I thought back on my career for business school, there have been a few times where people are like, you should do this, like sales, you'd be good at sales. And I was like, oh, I'm too, knowledgeable with numbers. I cannot go into sales, the sales, that is not for me. And it's so slimy and sleazy, whatever I thought. I don't know what I thought. The crazy part is what I think about now for sales. So after business school, I worked in sales. That's basically what I did. I was like raising capital for hedge funds. And what I realized was sales is really relationship building.
Yeah.
And if you're really selling something of value, it's not about, selling ice to Eskimos like that. That was the kind of thing in my mind, like that kind of behavior. But really it's like telling somebody what the product is and seeing if it's for them. And if it's not, like, okay, no big deal. You can, I'm not going to try to sell you something you don't need. But the more that you're able to establish relationships with people and explain things and communicate, the better a salesperson you are. And
Absolutely.
like not know that,
Yeah.
as a 22-year-old, 21 or whatever. And I kind of regret it because I think that I would have had a really different trajectory in life.
Yeah.
I like that. And so that's
So let's tap into right now. There's all the rear view mirror, but there's everything that you've done that's been successful, of everything that you've accomplished and done in your life. What are you the proudest of?
oh, definitely Terawatt.
Yeah.
Definitely because, like I said, it's I mean, okay. Well, it was sort of like a value-driven idea that's evolved like 100 times, and it's still stuck to its original values, and that the whole business is built on these values, and so there's no like compromise where, like I said, after having this really nice epiphany, then I was like, let's take advantage of all these people now. Like, I'm really glad I didn't do that, right? Like, there's a lot of times when even like boilerplate contracts from lawyers were not, what's the word? They were just trying to take advantage of people, right? And so I was like, I don't want to do that. And I would like change boilerplate or I would. And so now everything really is like aligned to my values. And like that makes me so proud because everything I say is completely aligned. That, like we're a marketplace, right? We have like three stakeholders. We only have one website. We don't say different things to different people. We're not giving different pitches. Everything's very above board and transparent. And for me, by the way, that's the easier. I just don't want to have to remember two stories or three stories,
Yeah.
And I just like I'm just so happy that I kind of like I am who I am and I lead this life that's very consistent. Like the Terawatt stuff I talk about is very consistent with like what I believe and how I think things should work. And it just makes me so I just, just wish we were like more successful.
Yeah.
Like I
Right.
wish we were Airbnb. Like I wish everyone knew about Terawatt. Like that I think one day will come and I don't really like, again, I try not to hold too hard. I'm not holding on to like success or trying to hit a certain metric, but it's really just like, I want to do more and help more people. And I think one day we'll get there.
Absolutely.
Um, and so,
So at the end of the day, Francie, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, customers, everyone. But you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
who do I think I am? Uh, well, actually, in some of my personality assessments, it's come up that not only am I an idea generator, like an entrepreneurial type, but I also am an executor. And so that I think is those are like the two traits, right? I can like think big, but then I can also like make it happen or like take the steps to start to make it happen. And also I'm a connector. That's another big thing, like a theme in my life is I love like matchmaking. And that's kind of also why this business works, right? Because it's like one of my superpowers. I just try to treat everyone well.
Yeah.
I think I want everyone to be successful.
Yeah.
And someone being having trouble does not make me feel better about myself.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I think like I feel happier about the world and life and my life when someone's doing well.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the natural segue. If anyone wants to get involved, they want to reach out, they want to see the good business, where do they go? Where's the best place to go?
So Terawatt.co, no M. That's our website, and there's a lot of stuff there. You can reach me there. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and then we have a LinkedIn page for Terawatt as well. We are going to be speaking at a few conferences coming up. So if anyone is going to the American Library Association conference in Philadelphia in June, we'll be there giving a panel about turnover and burnout. And then, and I'm speaking at a New Jersey conference on home health care and nursing homes about turnover as well.
Okay. This has been wonderful, Francie. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your story. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure, Joe. Have a great day.
Absolutely.
Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.